Well, a very, very good afternoon and a very, very warm welcome. Hi, it's Cassim, and welcome to this week's goal setting workshop. Firstly, want to start off by thanking you so much for watching today. Thanking you so much for taking the time to listen to me. And I hope that something that I say today, something that I share with you today, can help you become a higher, fuller expression of who you're capable of becoming. Before I go into today's workshop, let me just do a little bit of housekeeping. Number one, if you like what I share with you guys, if you like some of the things that I'm going to talk about, if you find this inspirational, helps you in some way, jump on my YouTube channel, Cassimotive, and subscribe to my channel. I need to say that. But the other thing as well, before we get into the workshop, is go and get yourself a piece of paper and go and get yourself a pen, because both of those things are going to be really important. Primarily because there is a difference between a workshop and a seminar. A seminar is where you go to a room, a person, a man or a woman stands in front of you, or a group of men or women, and they basically talk to you the entire time, and you sit there and you do basically nothing apart from just listen to what they say. In a workshop, you've actually got to get involved. You've got to actually do something. You've got to participate. And so it's really, this will be one of the first steps that you can take into really taking charge of your life, into really building an incredible kind of future, not only for you, but also for your family and the legacy that you're going to leave behind when eventually me and you both pass away. So go and get yourself a piece of paper, go and get yourself a pen. And also on that, let me just add one further thing, which I think is really important. There is a saying, Einstein once said, that if you keep doing the same thing in the same way and expecting a different outcome, then it's a definition of insanity. So if you are listening to me right now and you're like, actually, to be fair, I've never really done goal setting before. I've never really wrote down some of the goals that I want in my life. But as I begin to look at my life, I don't really have too much. I'm not that successful. I don't really have everything that I have in my life or would like in my life. It's not that I'm not grateful, but I would like more if possible. I know I'm earning 30 grand and there are people who can't even earn 5 grand, but I would ideally like to earn 100 grand. If you are that kind of person, then what I would share with you is writing your goals down and actually participating in this workshop is going to change some of the effects and the results that you're going to begin to get in your life, because you're going to do stuff that you've never done before. Okay, so I want to begin off before we actually get into the actual practical bits of the workshop, by speaking to you and sharing with you a little bit about why I started these workshops. This week I saw a friend of mine, and we had a meal together, and he said to me, Cassim, obviously mate, I noticed that you do the workshops on a Sunday, and you go live and you kind of do all, you speak to people and try to help people with their goals and stuff. Why did you start it? And perhaps I've never really articulated this across to you, so I thought that I would share with you a little bit as to why it is that you are basically watching me today. So for those of you who don't know my story, I was originally born in Uganda in Kampala. So Uganda is in East Africa, is surrounded by countries like Kenya and Tanzania. And it runs right through the equator, so it's a very tropical country. So if you like things like mangoes, bananas, that kind of stuff, it is a paradise for somebody like you. And I grew up in poverty. There is no really cozy way for me to kind of cover it up, to the degree that I used to have to go and fetch water. I didn't really have clothes. I grew up where, and I remember this so vividly, where the toilet was literally a hole in the ground. There was no, I didn't see toilet paper until I came to the UK. I didn't even know toilet paper existed. Why? Because you would just use your hands and water to basically wipe your ass when you went for a shit. That's horrible for me to tell some of you in case you're eating your food, but I'm just really painting a picture of where it is that I started. I grew up we didn't have beds. We literally had beds which had been like literally, imagine taking mud, like when a kid's at the sandy beach and they build a sandcastle. That's essentially what we did. They built beds out of simply the ground. We didn't have like mattresses and bed covers and things like that. The house where I lived, there were no windows. So started from that kind of background, and obviously many of you know, in 2001, I then moved to a place called Exeter in Devon, and then from Devon, my parents moved to Reading in Berkshire, which is where I've basically spent the predominant my predominant kind of formative years. And when I kind of went through my formative years, I basically went a bit nuts. I basically went a little bit crazy. And it all came to a climax one day where I had a bailiff come to my mum's house. And it's just multiple things that basically happened. It's a long, long story, which would take me literally hours to explain to you some of the things that had happened. But essentially what happened was a bailiff came to my mum's house. I was an estate agent at the time. I was at work, and I remember my mum calling me when I was at work, and I didn't answer the phone. And I don't know how many of you can relate to this, but have you ever got home, whether it be to your missus or your mum, or you've gone and seen somebody, and before you've even said anything, you already know that something bad has already happened? So I remember going home. I already knew my mum had tried to call me in the daytime anyway, but I didn't answer the phone because essentially I'd had bailiffs chasing me. I think I had like 9 bailiffs chasing me because I had payday loans from like 9 different companies. I didn't pay what do you call it, my parking fine tickets. It's just a multiple of different things. And so I'd gotten into a habit of not basically answering my phone because I knew that if somebody was calling me, 9 times out of 10 it was going to be a bailiff of some kind or somebody wanting money from me. So I just didn't answer the phone. So I arrived at home, and I remember it was a cold winter's evening. I got home, and when I arrived home, I saw my mum crying. Now, you have to understand, I'd never seen my mum crying ever. In fact, that's a lie. I'd only seen my mum crying once in my life, which was the day that my biological father died, and we went to my biological father's funeral. That was the only day that I'd ever seen my mum cry. The next time that I saw my mum crying in over 24 years was when I basically came home that day. Now, you have to understand, imagine you'd grown up in Africa, loads of things had happened, you'd managed to move to England, and your mum had raised you as a single parent because your father had basically abandoned her and just went off. And you've moved to England, your mum's worked really hard, your mum's done like part-time jobs, your mum's been a cleaner, your mum gave up her education when she was younger to try and raise you and give you the best possible future. Now you've just seen her crying. And the reason why she's crying is because you, her son, who she's worked really hard to help, is the cause of that. And basically what ended up happening was we went through I had to then tell my parents about the bailiffs and the money and all of that kind of stuff. And it got to the point where after that night, I remember laying, because at the time we lived in a 3-bedroom house and I was sharing a bunk bed, even at age 24, with my brother. And my brother used to stay on the top bunk bed and I used to stay on the bottom bunk. And I remember laying in my bunk bed and I remember thinking to myself, this can never happen again. I'm willing to change. I'm willing to do whatever is necessary never to disappoint my mum in this same way. You have to understand, after this event, my mum didn't speak to me for like 3 months. This is how I knew it was so bad. I knew it was so bad what had happened that basically my mum didn't no longer cook me my favorite food. So, for example, when I was growing up, and my brothers and sisters will attest to this, my mum used to basically cook food based on what I wanted. The meals in the evening, she would ask me, Cassim, what do you want? And she would basically cook, I would say 9 out of every 10 meals based on what I wanted to eat. You have to understand, for about 3 months, my mum didn't cook any of the food that I wanted. She didn't even ask me, she just cooked food. That's how I knew shit had hit the fan. So after this event happened, I basically said to myself, right, I'm going to do whatever it is to figure this out, because clearly something that I'm doing isn't working here. Clearly, I've bought into the wrong plan. Clearly, there is something about what I'm doing at the moment which is leading me, or has led me to get to this point right now. And that's because I'd heard so many people talk about accountability, etc., etc. So I was like, okay, I get it, loads of the bailiffs have chased me, etc., etc. But clearly something about me has led to this event right here. So in some way, I've got some erroneous choices and decisions that I've been making in my life. So I basically went out to study two questions. From that day, and for the last 6.5 years, I went out to study two questions. Number one, I wanted to know, is it possible for a boy from Africa who came from poverty, who didn't have windows in his house, who had to go and fetch water, is it possible for that human being to start with nothing, start from those meager beginnings, and go on and to live an incredible life? And the way that I defined an incredible life is, I didn't just mean having lots of money, because at the beginning of this journey, that was how I defined kind of success. I wanted to earn lots of money. I wanted loads of money, right? And in fact, most of you have already seen my title, which is that my title is Girls Are Not Interested in Boys Who Do Not Have Money, right? I've basically figured out very quickly that no matter how nice of a guy you are, the reality is, to sustain and have an incredible relationship, you need money. You need cash, okay? You've got to pay for your children's education. You've got to pay for, if you have children, pencil cases. You and your missus have got to be able to go out on dates, and you've got to be able to actually provide. So I figured, right, there is no way a girl's ever going to be interested in a guy if the guy has not even got his money problems, his money area of life in order. And obviously, what had led up to all this entire thing was the fact that I was mishandling money. Nobody had ever in my life taught me how to handle money, right? Even, do you know the ironic thing about this? My stepdad is actually a chartered accountant. But I'd never gone to my stepdad to ask about how to handle money, about how to do accounting, about losses and profits, and we're looking at doing a budget. I'd never done any of that kind of stuff, even though my dad did it every single day for a living. So that was the first question. I wanted to know, is it possible for that person to start from nothing and go on and live an incredible life, and go on be wealthy, not just in terms of money, but in terms of spirituality, but in terms of vitality, but in terms of character. I wanted to be wealthy in all aspects of life, not just in terms of money. The second question that I wanted to know is it possible for that person to actually make it from the bottom and get some of those things without ending up divorced, without ending up killing himself, without ending up stepping on everybody on the path to getting there, without turning into a dickhead on the pursuit to getting there, and without getting there and ending up unhappy or basically committing suicide? Because that was one of my fears. Every person that I had heard of who was a healthy person, who had vitality, who had financial wealth, they were dicks, right? The perception that I had was that there is no way it is possible for somebody to honestly be successful and be a good person and still be happy. Those three things just didn't coincide. But I was like, aren't there? And I think that's why Jim Rohn was so radical for me in my life, because when I went online, because that's what happened, that very night I went online and I started studying how to turn your life around. And I came across Jim Rohn, and Jim Rohn kind of was so profound for me in my life, primarily because he said that it was possible for me to be an incredible person and have financial wealth and be a good person and not step on everybody to get there. Why? Because he said he'd done it. right? And he had testimonials, and various people had talked about the fact that he was an amazing, incredible human being, and he's made an indelible impact on their life. And so I was like, that's what I want. I want to be a good person. I want to help other people. I want to become rich. I want to have vitality. That's what I want. So when I went on that path, I was basically looking for what I call principles, common denominators. I was looking for, what do all these people have in common? All these successful people who are happy and have everything in their life balanced, what do they know that I don't know? Which is, again, one of the major defining moments in my life that happened was the day that I listened to a guy called Brendan Burchard say that the best time to enter the woods is after you've looked at the map. And the reason why that was so profound for me is because when I started looking at my life, I began to notice, holy crap, I've never looked at the map. You see, what Brendan Burchard said was that most people in the area where he lives in Montana, in America, a lot of people, even though there are signs everywhere saying, look at the map, ensure you plan your route through the forest, there are so many signs. Most people enter the freaking woods and then they end up lost and they don't know the way how to get out of the woods, or they took the wrong track. And then an ambulance has to come and rescue them. Or, sorry, an air ambulance, or they have to find marshals to go out there and rescue them. Why? Because they did not plan. They did not take a good look at where they wanted to go, plan things, and then execute, and then start going on that path. And that was a major thing for me. I'd realized I had heard so many people say that to be successful, you've got to work hard, right? I'd heard so many people say that if you ask anybody who knows me, one of the primary things everybody knows about me as Cassim is my unbelievable work ethic. I work really hard. Why? Because my entire life when I was growing up, that's all I ever heard. But then obviously when I came to this night where the bailiff came to my mum's door, I realized clearly this path is not working. I'm 24. If you speak to people who know me, they'll tell you I've had like 4 different jobs at one time. So I was like, clearly this map that I've chosen is not working. I'm doing what everybody has told me I should be doing to become successful. Yeah, I'm in debt. Yeah, I've just made my mum cry, right? So something about my plan clearly isn't working. And so what I eventually went on to discover, as I started reading autobiographies, as I started listening to interviews, as I started looking at studies, is I started to discover all these principles, all these common denominators. And one of those common denominators that linked people who started with nothing and built their way to success, individuals who had a fulfilled life, who had abundance, who were wealthy not just in terms of money, but in terms of attitude, but in terms of spirituality, but in terms of vitality, they had a really clear understanding of life, of what it is that they wanted. They had a vision. They had somewhere they were trying to aim. And it wasn't that there was a guarantee that they were going to get there. It wasn't that there was a guarantee that there weren't going to be obstacles in their way. It wasn't that people weren't going to try to stop them, or they were not going to have to change. It's just that they had a vision. They had a clear picture of where it is that they wanted to go, and essentially were making their way towards that. And what I later on went to discover is that they had used this thing called goal setting. Now, you have to understand, guys, up until age 24, not a single member of my family had ever told me, or anyone that I knew, grandparents, school, my best friend, my colleagues, I had been working in, I think up to today, I've worked in 14 different workplaces. And I'm telling you, even to this day, nobody has ever told me. Actually, that's kind of a lie, because my previous boss, George, a little bit told me about it. But nobody outside of those of George had ever told me about goal setting. Nobody had told me, Cassim, one of the ways in which you get what you want is sit down, write it all down, build a great picture, build a plan, Talk about who you want to become, where you want to go, some of the obstacles you're going to need to overcome. Write down and quite try and define some of the attitudes that you're going to need and some of the skills that you're going to need to acquire. Not a single person had ever told me that. So I was like, so imagine me finding that every book I read, autobiography, biography of successful people, is that they keep talking about goals. And I was like, well, why do all these people keep talking about goal setting? I don't understand. Nobody's ever told me about this. My mum, who loves me, has never told me I should goal set. My stepdad is highly successful, but he's never told me I should goal set. No one in my life has ever told me. So what's going on here? Why do all these successful people keep saying this? And I basically discovered that the reason why is because you can't teach somebody what you don't know. This is going to be shocking for most of you because it was shocking for me. So I started studying and interviewing successful people. I'd literally go and meet business people and athletes and people like that. And I'd ask them, how did you become successful? Most of them had no idea. They couldn't articulate to me how it is that they became successful, right? And so what I want to share with you is that a lot of people can't teach you because they've never actually sat down and thought about how they became successful. Your grandparents cannot tell you what makes a great marriage because they've never really sat down, even though they've been married for like 50 years, they've never really sat down and thought, what have we actually done that has made this marriage great? You can't pass something on to someone that you've never identified, if that makes sense. So really this goal setting workshop is me giving back to you. Because I never had anybody tell me this. But I wanted to ensure that before I die, I help as many people realize that goal setting is one of the keys to greatness. It's one of the keys to achieving your goals. It's one of the keys to achieving your potential. You really, I'm telling you, can do the most incredible things if you just do this workshop. So we've overrun and I've actually gone onto this a lot longer than what I wanted to, but I really wanted to sell to you this goal setting workshop. I really wanted to show you where it is that my motivation started and why I'm so driven and why I'm so passionate about this. Because I know that if you take a seed, a mango seed, and you put it on a windowsill, if nobody knows that you're supposed to put it into the ground, that same seed still has potential. It still can do the most incredible things. But if nobody takes a seed and plants it into the ground and waters it because they don't know that that's what they should do, that seed will spend all its existence never actually becoming fruitful. Let me take this further. Some of you in your life, you are that seed. You have the potential to blossom into and become fruitful to the same degree as if you took a mango seed, planted it into the ground, into soil, watered it, and in years down the line, you would get thousands and hundreds of mangoes, right? I think all of us can agree that clearly, obviously, there may be the wind and we have to put it in the right, we may need to put the mango tree in certain soil, but we know if you take a mango seed and you put it in the ground and you water it, that after years you are going to get mangoes. Some of you, because you don't understand that you're supposed to goal set, which is the soil, right? It's a soil which is bringing out some of your potential. You may go your entire life and we never see you. You may go your entire life and operate below your potential. I wonder if we will ever see who you really are in your lifetime. Will anyone be able to stand up and say they knew who you were, what you stood for, your potential, what you did for them, how you impacted them in your lifetime? Something for you to think about. Right, okay, so I'm excited. I want to get this workshop underway. I'm guessing by now you must have got yourself a piece of pen. You must have got yourself a pen, a piece of paper. Ideally, as I say to you guys, get yourself a journal. A journal is far better. You guys have seen my journal entries online. I encourage as many of you to get journals as possible. Let's go into the workshop. Right, so the first thing that I want you to do is very simple. Take your pen, take your paper or your journal and simply write down whatever it is that you want. It's as simple as that. Now, note that I didn't say write down what you think you can get. I wrote down, I said write down what you want. I didn't say write down what your mum has told you is possible for you. No, 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 no. I said write down what you want. I didn't say write down what you think you can get based on the mistakes that you've made in the past. No, no, no. I said write down what you want. I didn't say write down on your piece of paper what you want based on the opinions of your uncle and what other people have achieved in their lifetime. No, I said write down what you want. And the reason why I say that is because some of you who are listening to me, you don't understand a philosophy which I've had to basically understand. I didn't know this, but I came to this realization that whilst every human being is equal in the eyes of God, in the eyes of the universe, we don't all have the same capacity. And the example that I use is Usain Bolt. So, for example, I could train for years. I could get the best trainers. I could spend thousands of pounds on the best running shoes, and I could get the best coaches. And I'm telling you, I could do everything possible to make myself as one of the fastest human beings on this planet. But I'm telling you, if me and Usain Bolt get into a race, Usain Bolt will beat me. Now, that doesn't mean that Usain Bolt is better than me. It just means in the area of running, his capacity is just greater than mine. Let me take this further. If Michael Jackson was still alive, me and him, actually, let's speak about somebody who's relevant today, Sam Smith, right? I could spend thousands of pounds on coaches, thousands of pounds on the latest tracks and the latest things, but I'm telling you that if it was a competition, if both me and Sam Smith went on the X Factor, Sam Smith's ability to sing would be better than mine. Not because he's a better human being than me, but simply in that arena, he has more capacity. And so what I'm saying is, as you begin to write down some of the things that you want, don't allow what other people have achieved to stop you from reaching your potential. Because you may have gallon capacity, but the family in which you were raised in only has pint-sized capacity. You may be able to go out there and impact people with your love on a global scale, but your parents were only able to do it in their marriage between those two. You may be able to go out there and use your wisdom or your ability or knowledge in a workshop to impact thousands of people in the town that you live in. But your father or mother could only do it in the company that they owned, which they only had 4 employees. It's not that you're better than your parents, it's simply that you have more capacity than they do. So what I would share with you and ask you to do is, really go crazy on this goal setting thing. Just what we're trying to do here is we're trying to build a vision for you. It is biblically written that without a vision, the people will perish. What we're trying to do is build a better picture of the future. I remember something that a guy called Tony Robbins once said. Tony Robbins said that there are lots of people out there in the world who can see things as they used to be, right? They talk about how the past used to be and how great things used to be, or how bad things used to be, or how the good old days. There's loads of people, loads of people who are like that in your life, who talk about how great they were in school and who talk about how amazing it was when they went to Ibiza when they're 21. Loads of people can do that. Then there is a next level of people, which is a few people who can see the world as it is. Okay? This is people who can see reality. People who can look at their life and say, look, I have no money. Okay? I have no money. I'm broke as fuck. Clearly, the education system in the UK doesn't work because it is rigidified to make everybody the same. But we know some people have dyslexia, some people are visual learners, and the education system in the UK doesn't fit to that. There's loads of people who can say that, right? We know that. You know that. But here's an even smaller number of people. People who can see things better than they are. There's very few people in the UK who can see things better than what they are. Who can say, do you know what? I know the education system is shit at the moment in the UK, but let me tell you what. This is how we can enhance it. We can have these kinds of classes and we can break it down like this and we can break it down like that and we can have these kinds of pupils in this way. Very few people can do that. Most people complain about how things used to be, they complain about the weather, they complain about politics, yet they don't come up with any solutions. This goal-setting workshop is, if you're in a situation in your life at the moment where you have no money, you know that you should be earning at least 50 grand, yet you're not. You know that you're broke, like you have no girls. You haven't spoken to a single girl. Okay, that's a lie. You've spoken to a few girls on Tinder, but what I'm saying is you haven't had a real relationship in years. When you know you're a great person, you know it, I know it, you know it. So you really shouldn't be this single. You haven't even got laid. All this wanking that you're doing on Pornhub, it needs to stop. You should be getting a girl to do that for you, right? And so what I'm saying to you is, if you know that and yet you're still not getting it, can I suggest that you start to consider whether you are really can see things better than they are? Can you see yourself in the future with somebody? Can you see yourself in the future with money? This is what this is built. This goal-setting workshop is really about giving you hope. It's really about giving you faith. It's really getting you to believe in humanity again. Because the truth of the matter is, guys, a lot of people don't believe anymore. I can't tell you the amount of people who I meet who don't believe in anything anymore. They don't believe in humanity. They don't believe in the future. They don't believe in their ability to figure things out. A lot of people don't believe that things are going to get better. You have to be the exception. Because, as I said to you earlier on, Einstein said, if he who thinks he can, it's not Einstein who actually said that, it was a different person, but the point is, if you think that something is impossible, then it is. If you think that it is possible, then it's possible. Because if you think that it's impossible, you're never going to do anything about it. If you think that it's possible, you're going to try your best. Guess what? I have found in my experience that the people who try have a better chance of succeeding than the people who do nothing at all. I'm just saying, your life, you decide. So that's the first exercise. By the way, let me give you a couple of things that I wrote down back in the days on my list. I wrote down some things like this. I wanted to send my mum to New York. I wanted to interview a president. I wanted to have a meal with Eminem. I wanted to have at least 10 houses rented out. I wanted to be married for 50 years. I wanted to love myself. I wanted to have £1,000 saved. Oh, that was a big one for me. Have £1,000 saved. You guys have to remember that when I first started this, and I did this exercise myself for the first time, I was in debt. Thousands of pounds in debt. So can you imagine? I remember doing this exercise, and I was literally, I remember I was fighting myself. I was like, this is so fucking stupid. Me doing this fucking exercise, I'm in debt, and you're telling me that if I fucking write down these goals, that what? All of a sudden I'm just gonna get rid of this debt? This is so stupid, this exercise. I remember it. Now, you might be interested to know that I got out of debt within 9 months of being in debt, right? Because long story I'm not going to get into, but essentially I managed to get myself out of debt, right? Every amount of money that I earn at the end of this month, apart from paying my rent, is mine. I have no cars. Literally the only outgoings that I have that are kind of fixed is my rent and my council tax and TV license. That is it. Apart from that, every other amount of money that I earn is mine. Imagine being in a position in your life where everything you earn, everything, apart from paying your mortgage or your rent, is yours. It just, you breathe even easier like that when you start to think about that. I remember one of my goals was to have £1,000 in my bank account, and I remember going to the bank. It was in town. It was a Barclays bank, and I remember I'd just been paid, and I went into my bank and looked there, and it was like 1,000 and something. And I remember looking at it. I'd never had £1,000, which was just all mine. Usually, when I got paid £1,000 like money, I'd usually have to pay my council tax, pay my rent, pay my phone bill, pay my... Actually, that's a lie. That's the other thing I do have to pay on a monthly basis. I have to pay my phone bill. So that was, earlier on, was technically a lie. Usually, I then would have had to pay my insurance for my car. I had to pay for financing in my car. It was insane. It was actually insane, right? So I would basically work, get paid, and have no money. I'd have like £100, which is going to last me a month. It was insane. And I remember going to my bank and looking at it. It just even makes me excited now because I remember that day. It was so exciting. I wonder whether you've ever had £1,000 in your bank account there, not to use at all, but just there as an emergency fund. You know, one of the things when I coach people that I say to them that will relieve stress, in fact, coincidentally, I'm in the middle of planning for a workshop that is going to be all about how to men deal with anxiety and stress and things like this. And one of the things that I said is that one of the major things, or I am going to say anyway, one of the major things that causes a lot of stress from men in particular is fear they're going to lose their job. And many times men will stay in a job that really they don't like. Men will see an opportunity that we can actually jump on or invest on, or there's a job that we can go for, or a career we can pursue. But the issue is we're so scared to lose our job that we never take that opportunity. So we end up just being unhappy. And what I say in that workshop is save 3 months worth of savings. Because if you can have 3 months worth of just all of your living costs, so in a month, I don't know, if you spend, including your rent, including all your food and everything, if you spend, I don't know, 1,500 quid, save more than 1,500, to save 1,500 quid times by 3. Because when you can have 3 months worth of savings, in the relief, you breathe easier, man, you breathe easier. Okay, you just take opportunities, right? When you go to work, you can actually enjoy your job instead of worrying and stressing out, which causes so much more tension, and everything else just gets affected in your life. So that's the first thing that I would share with you. But go crazy, guys. Write down what you want. Right? Don't let me stop you. Go mental. Maybe for you, you want to build an ice cream shop or have an ice cream van down in Cornwall somewhere. You say, I want to travel around the world, Cassim. I want to be a writer. Cassim, do you know what? I want to do videos online. I want to start a workshop where I teach people how to train their dogs, Cass, because I absolutely love dogs. Cassim, I want to come up with an innovative product on how people can be able to prevent neck problems, whatever it may be. That dream, write it down. Don't worry about how you're going to do it. Just write it down. Put it on paper. By the way, let me just say something that I think is really important. I would say that one of the common keys that I have found to success is when you meet people who are successful, there is a level of intensity that they have. If you meet people who are really successful, and a lot of people have never really met people who are highly successful, but if you've been around people who are highly successful, one of the things that you tend to find is that these people are intense, man. They're intense all the time. And it becomes very clear, especially when you keep being around successful people and then you go around people who are not as successful. It becomes really clear because really highly successful people, they're on it all the time. They ask questions. They're like, okay, let's go. Whenever they find an idea, they act on it. What do we need to do? Where do we need to go? Can we do it tomorrow? That's the way they begin to think. Other people, when they come up with an idea, they're like, well, it's probably going to take 2 years, and then I don't have the issues. Do you see what I mean? When you get around these two kinds of comparisons, you're like, whoa, this is a bit shocking. And part of it is because people who are high achievers and who are winners and champions, they're serious about life. And so you basically doing this workshop, by you actually doing it and participating, it must mean you have to be someone serious. Because why would you take the time to sit there, listen to me? You could be watching EastEnders, Hollyoaks Omnibus, you could be on Pornhub, you could be down watching Netflix, you could be doing a lot of things. But if you're watching me, clearly you must be someone who's serious. Clearly you must want to win. Because people who want to win are prepared to look like idiots. They're prepared to look like they're losing. They're prepared to do things that are unconventional because they realize that in order to get what you've never had before, you're going to have to do things that you've never done before. That's the first thing. So by the way, as I continue going down this exercise, because usually when I do this on one-to-one or I do this in a full seminar, what would usually happen is that we would literally spend like a full hour going through this list. I would get you to start telling me some of the things that you would do, but unfortunately we don't have that. I'm already running behind on time anyway. But you, after we finish this workshop, continue going. The goal that you want to get to is you want to get to 500 things. Okay, 500 things is your goal of things that you want. You want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. You want to go and visit Tomorrowland or go to a festival Tomorrowland. You want to go skiing. You want to own Egyptian cotton, an Egyptian cotton pillow, right? Just go mental, whatever it is for you. So the next exercise that we want to then get into after you've done all that is you want to now name or give each one of these goals a number between 1 and 10. And the number will equate to how long you think it will take you to achieve this goal. For example, if you've got a goal on there that you want to save £1,000, but at the moment you're in your overdraft and you think it's probably going to take you about 7 months to do it, here's what I'm suggesting. Round it up to a year and give it 1 year. If one of your goals is to buy 2 properties which you can rent out, and you think, do you know what, by the time I own my first property, by the time we get enough equity in that for me to remortgage that, and then take the equity out of that and move it to another property which you can rent out, and then whatever, do that for a second property, it's probably going to take us about 15 years for us to do that, me and my missus. So what I'm saying to you is round it up to 10 years. And whilst you're doing that, I'm going to say a couple of things. Number one, people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in a decade. This philosophy was something that statement that I've just shared with you has been something that really has been a major factor in why it is that I operate and how I operate my life. Because you have to understand, we live in a world today of instant gratification. Guys, any of you can get anything that you want today. Last night, in fact, I'm actually scared, but last night I ordered a book called Falling Grace or something like that, which is a book about how to deal with pain and stuff like that, right? And the book that I ordered last night, I've been told is going to arrive today. Now, I ordered that book last night at 10 o'clock. The book, I have been told, is going to arrive today. Do you understand how significant that is? Last night I ordered the book, is going to arrive today on a weekend. If you want food, you don't have to wait ages. Go on Deliveroo, go on Uber Eats, go on Just Eat, and they will deliver it to you in 20 minutes. You don't even no longer have to wait, right? If you want to go to Spain or Greece, it can be done the same. If you wanted to actually go down to Greece today, or I don't know, Spain, you could literally leave right now at this moment, stop watching this, go and buy your ticket, and in like 3-4 hours you will be in Greece. It's that simple. We live in a world of instant everything now, which is good, but it's also bad because no one ever plans anything. No one ever builds anything anymore. People don't build marriages. People don't build families anymore, right? People don't build careers anymore. Everybody today is trying to scapegoat, and they're trying to microwave success. Everybody wants everything now. And I think that's part of the reason why so many people are hopeless in today's society, because we live in a world where it's kind of like when you look on Instagram, you see Instagram models who look amazing, and you're like, you go scroll down their feed and you look like, and it looks like, oh my God, all their pictures going back, they started their Instagram 6 months ago and they look amazing. And if you weren't intelligent in thinking, you would not realize that that person started posting on Instagram 6 months ago and they've got 50,000 followers, but it's taken them 9 years to get to the point that we've just met them. A lot of people don't understand that when you become a millionaire and you see somebody owning a 5-bedroom detached home in Caversham, in Windsor, in somewhere really nice in Chelsea, it's very easy to meet them and think, well, clearly this person just inherited the money. Well, clearly this person just took advantage of the crossrail. When in reality, they've had to work for 20 years, working through their career ladder, becoming a junior, becoming a manager, becoming a regional, right? And they've worked their way through that, all of that, before they've been able to earn the kind of income which could purchase that kind of home. But we're looking at it instantly and we're thinking, well, clearly they've just got here by magic, right? I can share with you that success, there is a phrase now. What's the phrase? There is a phrase that is, once again, I heard Tony Robbins say, people are rewarded in public for what they've practiced for years in private. Oh my God. You guys, I'm giving you guys too much stuff here for free. Let me just repeat that statement. If you get what I'm just about to repeat, I promise you, you're going to be a very successful person. People are rewarded in public for what they've practiced for years in private. Did you get it? See, if I were you, I would write that statement down. Because that statement, I'm telling you, if I'm telling it to you, and I've studied successful people who've started with nothing for the last 6 years, and I'm telling you that that is an important statement to write down, I would write that statement down. People are rewarded in public for what they've practiced for years in private. I wonder what you're practicing. I wonder what in private, I wonder what people are going to look at you in 10 years and say, clearly he's just gifted. Clearly he's lucky. Bullshit, are you lucky? They haven't seen what you've had to go through. You've had to go through hell. They've just met you and they think you look amazing now. But hold on a minute. I wonder how many people are going to look at your relationship in 10 years and say, they just meant for each other. Bullshit, are you? You've had to go through hell with your missus. You didn't agree on whether you should have children. You didn't agree on whether you should change your children to private school or normal school. You argued. You slept in different bedrooms. And yes, you've gone through all that hell. And now they've met you. And apparently you were just meant for each other. Bullshit, right? I wonder if that's the kind of person who you are. I wonder if I just spoke to you then. Or whether you just heard that and thought, well, who are those people? If that doesn't sound like you, you're not quite on the right lines yet. Let me add one further note on this. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. That is a Chinese proverb. See, many of you, the reality is, I mean, it's actually incredible for me to actually listen to what people say to me sometimes, but I cannot tell you the amount of people who I meet who say to me, who are like 24, 23. And do you know what they say to me? Cassim, is too late. It's too late. I actually, listen, I went to get my, I don't know if I told you this before, but I went to get my hair cut last week. No, this week on Thursday. And when I went to get my hair cut, there was the guy who cut my hair was 17 years of age, and he was telling me about how he wanted to have like salons and own his own salon. And I swear, we were laughing, us guys who were getting our haircut, because he goes, yeah, but because he was telling me, he was like, yeah, but Cass, it's too late for me. I'm too old. It's too late for me to set up my business now. I'm never probably gonna own my own barbers because I'm so old now. I mean, me and you joke about that, right? And we think like 17. You can't even get served alcohol in America because you're not considered an adult, right? And we laugh at that. But some of you are not even 30, and you're saying that it's too late for you. Here's what I said to the boy. I said, and I'm going to use your age if you're 30 today. Let's use 28. If you're 28 today and you're listening to me, in 10 years, in a decade, a whole 10 years, you're only going to be 38. If we take another 10 years, which now is 2 decades, you're only going to be 48. You're not even 50 yet, and you've already gone 20 years. Basically, for some of you, that's like, imagine what you've done in the last 20 years and how much you've changed. It's that long, right? It's such a long time away. And what I'm trying to say to you is, if you could begin to think in that way of what could I do in 20 years? What could I build? Okay, fine, I fucked up my finances. I'm not good with money. Okay, if I start today and I start getting my money together, I wonder if I could become a millionaire. Okay, fine. At the moment, I'm in my overdraft and I freaking took on that student loan at uni, probably 20 grand. But if I started paying that off, even like 200 quid, in probably like, 7 years, I would have paid that off. And if I then start saving that 200, 300 quid, which in 8 years, I would already have a higher income, which means I can probably save more money. And I start saving from 8 years for another 12 years, which takes it to 20 years. How much money could I have saved? If you can begin to think in this way, remarkable things are going to happen in your life. But ultimately, it's your life. You've got to do whatever is best for you. You've got to do whatever brings you joy. You've got to do whatever makes sense to you. But that's my personal recommendation to you. So if by now, I'm guessing you've given all of those goals a number between 1 and 10. Now what you want to do is you want to count up how many 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, all the way up to 10 that you have down. Because what this exercise is designed to get you to do is this exercise is designed to help you see how far into the future you think. Because, for example, if you count all your goals and you're like, Cassim, I have loads of 1-year goals. That means you're a very short-term thinker, which means you don't build anything. You don't plan for anything in the future. But if you have loads of 10-year goals, it's good, but that means you also don't have short-term goals, which means that you don't do you don't have what I call confidence builders. When you set up a goal, which is like in 6 weeks, and you achieve it, it builds your self-confidence. Right? And then because that's how I actually ended up getting out of debt. One of the things that happened was I did something what was called a snowball effect, which is what happened was I started paying off the small debts, right? So I started paying off a payday loan where I owed them £100, right? I paid that off and I was like, oh, okay, well, I did that this month. Then I'd pay off 200 and then I'm like, oh, right, I've also done that. Then I'd pay off 300. When I did that, I was like, oh, what? I've paid that off too. And then all of a sudden, as you begin to pay these off, it's like, this is actually a possibility now. I can actually do this. And at the same time, what's happening is you have more money available to you, right? All of a sudden, it's remarkable what begins to happen when your confidence begins to build. So sometimes people say to me, Cassim, how could you possibly be so stupid as to set yourself a goal to run the length of Ireland, Northern Ireland, and the UK? Yeah, I started goal setting like 6 years ago. Back in them days, I couldn't set that kind of a goal because I just didn't believe in myself. But today, I can set such a kind of goal because I have so much confidence that even if things don't work out, I'll make them work out because I've seen what I've overcome in my life that I just go big. So look at how many ones and twos and threes leading all the way up to 10 that you have. The next thing that we then want to do is we want to begin to prioritize your goals. Clearly, if you've got a whole list of goals, you now know you cannot do everything, right? You've got a whole list of goals, but you cannot do all of those goals. You can't hit all of those goals. You can't do, it's impossible for you to do all of those things. So here's what I'm going to suggest to you. You can have anything that you want, just not all at once. What do you mean by that, Cass? I mean, you're going to have to decide which ones are important to you and which ones are not. You're going to have to decide which ones of these goals are you okay not achieving in your lifetime. The way that I did it is I did it like this. So I said, I know at some point I'm going to die. I know that, okay? History tells me nobody has survived this death thing. Maybe they have, but we don't know about them. As far as I can tell, I'm going to die at some point. What would I be okay on my deathbed not having achieved? So, for example, I remember back in them days, one of my things was, I said, I wanted to own a Rolls Royce, but then I was like, does it really matter if I don't own a Rolls Royce? To be honest with you, that's not that important to me. So I scrubbed that out. Because it was good, but it just wasn't a priority to me. I said, do you know what's really important to me? It's really important to me that I leave some kind of equity or properties for my children so that they don't have to worry so much about money as I had to. So I said, right, clearly it's going to be important for me to have multiple properties before I die. It's important to me. Because as I say, I don't want my kids to struggle with money. I want to have multiple properties where they can have some kind of income. And I struggled to get on the property ladder, so that was hard. I don't want them to be the same. So this is going to be a priority. Me finding out a way to own multiple properties is clearly going to be important. And as you begin to do this, what will eventually happen is that you will be left with what I call core goals. Things that are important to you. There is a phrase that Jim Rohn used where he said, don't major in minor things. There's a lot of people who spend their life doing stuff that has no meaning to them, right? There is some people in your life at the moment who you don't need in your life. But because you're not really exactly sure what is important to you, you kind of just put up with them. You know, I have a friend of mine and she was in a relationship and she was just undervalued in that relationship. And I was talking to her and I said, what's important to you? What actually is important to you in a relationship? And she said, I really want to have a baby. I said, do you believe deep down in your honest soul that this person is going to have a child with you? She said, no, Cass, I don't think so. And I said, well, then you're deluding yourself. You know, I know I'm being harsh and I'm being the bearer of bad news, but you're living in denial because you know deep down that is a really important thing to you to have a child and to raise a family, and the person who you say is messing you about and the person who you say won't commit to you, you say to me you know them better than anybody else, and you know deep down they're probably never going to give you their child, they're probably not going to marry you. You're living under delusion, right? Because you're waiting for them to maybe change. Maybe he might change, Cassim, she used to say to me. What do you want me to say? You know, I don't want to be the bad guy here, but I want you to live an abundant life. So one of the things that happens is when you get your priorities in order about what it is and where it is that is important to you and where it is that you want to kind of head towards in the next kind of decade, a lot of things become easier. Choices actually become easy. Some of you are reading lots of books, but because you don't know what's important to you, you're reading books that are not important. when you really clarify and get a clear idea on what is really important to you in your life, there's only going to be certain books that are relevant to you. For example, most of you know that I study two questions. How do you get what you want, and how do you do it without ending up divorced, ending up unhappy? So every book that I order off Amazon, off eBay, anywhere, is related to those two subjects. I told you about the book that I ordered last night called Falling from Grace. The book is all about how to heal from trauma, right? How to deal with pain. Because the reality is, all of life is essentially pain, right? We know it. You get into a relationship, you're going to conflict consistently with your missus because you're completely different people. So how do you heal from that? How do you heal from the fact that you want your parents to be a certain way, but they're not that certain way? How do you deal with the fact that you've been trying to have a child for the last 5 years and you're good people, but you can't have the child? There's a lot of pain and a lot of resentment that follows with that. And I wanted to understand, how does somebody heal from something like that so that they can be available to feel and to connect in a deeper way with their partner, with the people around them, with their destiny, with their calling, right? Some of the decisions you've been making over the last 5 years, they've not really been relevant. Some of the places where you're going on holiday, they're not important to you, but you've had to say yes because you didn't really know what was important. So this will help you prioritize and really get into clarity what really is important to you. So after you've done that, the next thing that you want to do is you want to clarify who you would need to become to get what you want. Have you actually ever thought about that question? Because I didn't realize, in fact, there was a number of lines which really altered the course of my life. The lines went something like this: for things to change for you, you have to change. For things to get better, you have to get better. To have more, you have to become more. See, those sentences may seem just like stupid sentences, but to me, they were life-changing. Primarily because I'd never thought that I was a problem. I didn't realize that people could even change. I know that sounds really stupid, and some of you may be listening to me and thinking, Cass, you're an idiot. Well, what do you mean you don't know that people can change? I didn't know that people could change. I didn't know that I could change the way I think about stuff. I didn't know that I could look at things that had happened in the past and interpret them in a different way. Well, I kind of knew, but I'd never really thought about it consciously before. I didn't know that I could take the fact that I had been arrested for drink driving and turn it into something positive by using it as a lesson to other people of the fact that you can be a good person with the right intentions and have make fucked up decisions. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person, but it just means you haven't really been thinking about your life, right? I didn't realize that you could be born from Africa, not being highly educated, come to England, be bottom sets all your life in school, not be very articulate, but then go on to write a book, but then go on to read in thousands of books. Like, you guys know, every single week I read 2 books. Usually an autobiography and usually a book based on some kind of data or research around those 2 questions. Now, bearing in mind, in school I was bottom set for everything. Doesn't that strike you as odd? Bearing in mind that if you spoke to me like 10 years ago, I hated reading. I hated school, really. I didn't like it. How can I possibly be how I am now? Because I discovered you could change. You could get better if you wanted to. You may not want to, but if you wanted to, which I wanted to change, as you know. So what I would share with you is that you want to now look at who would you need to become to achieve some of those things that you say are important. You may need to become more patient. You may need to give yourself grace. You may need to become more motivated, more driven. You may need to become more disciplined. For example, when I first started off, one of my goals was that I wanted to help men become higher, fuller expressions of themselves. So for me, I realized one of the things that I had to do is I had to become wiser in thinking. I had to be able to see people's situations from loads of different angles. For example, I use the example of a couple that's just come to me and they've come to me and said, well, my partner has just cheated. For most people, if you listen to somebody or somebody comes to you and they've said to you that their partner has just cheated on them, the natural response for most people is to give the advice, break up with the person. But the reality is that life is a little bit more complicated than that. The reality is that you've got to look at what is this person's background? Have these people been married for a long time? Have these people got children together? Have these people got investments together? Is there a track record of these individuals separating? Is there a track record of somebody cheating? You've got to look at the entirety of the situation instead of judging the situation like that. In my opinion, this would be anyway, right? You may disagree with me, but I'm just coming at this from my perspective, from my point of view. I realized I had to become non-judgmental because I came to realize that if I'm going to have somebody come into my office, come to me and sit with me and share with me their story, which is going to be very sometimes traumatic, I've got to be able to sit there and accept them for who they are, because I may be the only person who they've ever told this story to. And so what I would share with you, and going further and deeper into this, is that my point to you is this: you are going to have to become a different kind of person if you wish to achieve different kinds of results than you've had so far leading up to today. And my question to you is, who are you going to have to become? Have you ever thought about that question? I love a statement which said that you don't overcome challenges by making them smaller, you overcome challenges by making yourself bigger. Here's another statement: life was not designed to give us what we want, life was designed to give us what we deserve. My question is, are you the kind of person who deserves these results that you've written down? Do you deserve to earn the money that you've written down? Do you deserve to have the kind of marriage that you've written down that you want? Are you the kind of person that deserves this kind of future? Because I discovered that as a human being, you can go out there and earn this kind of future. And that's what I would encourage you to do. I would encourage you to become the kind of person who can earn that kind of future. The next part of the exercise that we then want to get into is we want to get into what I call the most important part, which is why. Why do you want all of these things? For what reason? Why do you want to become wealthy? Why do you want to become successful? Why do you want to be a winner? Why do you want to be a champion? Let me share a couple of things with you that have been useful for me. As you begin to write down some of the reasons as to why it is that you want what you want, because that's the whole point. You've got to write down what you want, the reasons why it is that you want what you want. And let me share this with you. Human beings will do more for others than we will ever do for ourselves. What does that mean, Cass? That means that I have discovered that the human species has this incredible ability to sacrifice themselves to do the most incredible things for other people. People will run marathons to save money or raise money for charities. People will go and do 3 or 4 different jobs so that they can support their family. Do you realize that? And further and deeper than that is, why would you ever do something like that? Why would you take a lower paying job in your life? Why? Because you may have to. In order to get some of the goals that you want, you may need to take a step down in management. In order to do this, you may need to become confident to achieve some of the goals that you have. Why would you become confident? Why would you go and put yourself out there? Let me share with you some of the reasons why I wanted to become successful. I wanted to become successful, for example, to see if it was possible. I wanted to know, is it possible for an African boy to do this? I wondered. How could I do it, is what I was wondering. And that's what I posed to you. How could you do it? I love something that I once heard Jim Rohn say. Jim Rohn said, if you had enough reasons, you could do the most incredible things. I wonder if you have enough reasons. Because the truth of the matter is, you're talented. You can become better. You're not dumb. You're intelligent. But my question is, do you have enough reasons to really realize your full potential? The last part of the exercise that I want to share with you, and again, as I said to you earlier on, we're speeding through this because I've overrun on time, but you do this in your own time. But the last thing that you want to do is research. You want to go out there and research the topic that you're interested in or the things that you want. For example, if one of your goals is to go to Hawaii, you want to go and research how much does it cost to get to Hawaii? What are the different flights? Where do you fly to? Do you fly to LA? Do you fly to San Francisco? What is the best time of the year to go to Hawaii? What activities do you do when you're there? Do people stay in resorts? Do people stay in houses? Right? What are the best islands to stay on? Because one of the great things that happens when you begin to research stuff and you get information is that information alleviates fear. So that's what I would share with you. Complete all that, do all of that, and hopefully where you will get to is that you will get to a position where you have not only built an incredible future, you've built an incredible view of the kind of person you need to become and also the reasons as to why you want to get there. I hope that this week's session has been useful. My apologies, we've overrun, but thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you in the next video, in next week's workshop. Bye for now.